If you are giving to get, it will not work. If you are giving as a tactic, it will not work. You have to be giving because you get to the point that the act of giving brings you joy. And that's why you're doing it. And you are happy to give in spite of the fact you know that 99% of the people that you give to will never buy from you. Welcome to the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast, where being a badass has less to do with what you wear and what music you listen to, and everything to do with whether you've got the thriving online business of your dreams. I'm your renegade thinking Harvard Law grad turned online entrepreneur host, Bobby Klinck. In my years building my thriving business, the most important lesson I've learned is that being a badass online marketer isn't about secret strategies or ninja tactics. It's about doing the basic stuff right and showing the F up. So each week here on the show, you'll get clear, easy to execute guidance on how to build your online business and a swift kick in the ass or two to make sure you're getting it done. Hey there, welcome to episode 143 of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Klinck, and I'm excited for today's show, but I've got some heavy lifting to do, I think, today. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about one of my core beliefs, but it's one that I think a lot of people need some convincing on. The topic for today's episode is this. If you want radical fans, you need to be a radical giver. And the core belief in here is to be a radical giver. And it is a concept that I have taken and run with probably more than anything else of my core beliefs and of the things that make me different from other people. And so I wanted to do a podcast episode about it. And actually what happened was we were recently, I was revising my welcome sequence, my emails that go out to people as they get on my list to really introduce them to me, my world, what I believe, what I have to offer, and all those things. And we were going through it, and we did an interesting thing with it. We actually used some of my most popular and controversial emails, which, by the way, happen to be the same things. In other words, emails that get the most positive feedback also tend to repel people the most. And so we kind of took those, and they were almost all podcast episode emails. And some of them remained. We were sending people to that podcast, but others we used and repurposed the story for something else. And as we were doing that, I was talking with my integrator, and we were kind of talking about it, and Katie and I were talking about, well, what do we want people to know? And there's some things that obviously you need to know about me, like the more cowbell concept, that I want you to step into being the face of your brand. And another one is this concept of being a radical giver. And we were doing that, and as we went through the sequences, oh yeah, there's got to be an email about that. And then it hit us that I didn't have a podcast episode where I dedicated to this topic. Now, I've talked about giving in various places on the podcast, but I didn't have a standalone episode where I went deep into radical giving. And so that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to try to convince you that you need to give more. And I mean that no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, you probably need to give more, including me. And that's kind of what I'm coming at, this perspective. And I've talked about this lots in groups, but to give you some sense of perspective, last year in 2019, I gave away over 6,000 copies of my privacy policy legal template. My competitors, on average, when I looked around, are selling that same template for $300. If you do the math, 6,000 times 300, that's $1.8 million in value that I gave away last year. And that's just the stuff that is like literally my freebie for everyone. And at various times I've given away other things, and I've participated in giveaways that I give people things, etc. So I've given away a ton of valuable content that most people would say I wouldn't do that. And I believe we all should. And so last year I gave away $1.8 million in value. My goal this year is to give away $4 million worth of legal templates. So that's my goal for the year, just to give you a sense of I'm shooting for something bigger. You can help me, by the way, if you want. If you still need a privacy policy for your website, you could go grab my free policy, my website privacy policy template by heading to bobbyklinck.com/free privacy policy. Again, bobbyklinck.com/free privacy policy. And if you know other people who need it, send them there too. I would love to give it to them as well. So that's what you can do on that. But now let's dive in. And I want to start, as you might expect, me being me, with a story. And it's my story. And it's the story that some of you have probably heard, but I'm going to go into a bit more depth here, telling the story of how I came upon this radical giving concept. And it's the story of me getting out of the dumps of entrepreneurship. Back in 2017, at the third quarter of 2017 is when I tried my first ever launch as an online entrepreneur, and it flopped. And I lost $25,000 to $30,000 once all of the stuff was put together from the first launch and the follow-up, et cetera. So at the end of 2017, I had never made a sale other than one that resulted in a refund during that first launch. But I'd never made a sale and was down probably $30,000 or more in the online space. That's where I was at the end of 2017. So I was in the dumps. And I remember that New Year's Eve, I was sitting in church. It happened to be a Sunday. And again, I mentioned this to people. I'm a man of faith. I don't talk about it a lot. And this isn't a religious story per se. But I was sitting there in church, and the pastor was talking about giving and the power of giving. And something about it resonated with me. And I don't know why it resonated with me. I had been hearing people talk about setting intentions for the year for 2018 and choosing words for the year. And so there on the spot, sitting in church, I decided that my 2 words for 2018 were going to be giving and gratitude. And I think the two go hand in hand, right? I mean, if you are grateful for what you have and for all the blessings in life, no matter where you are, you're more likely to give. But so those were the 2 words that I chose for the year. So that was where it started. And I'll tell you, in 2018, my first try at it really wasn't all that successful because I wasn't doing it right. And I like to say that a lot. Oftentimes we think a concept is wrong because we're not doing it right, or we're doing it wrong. And that's what I did because I had this idea that giving was my word of the year. And my first attempt at it was I decided I was going to try this concept called pay what you want. The idea behind it was I was going to run workshops, a series of like 8 weekly workshops about the legal stuff for entrepreneurs. But I was going to let people decide how much they would pay me. I wasn't going to set a price so they could pay me. I don't remember if they even had to pay me anything. I think they could have picked 0, or they could have picked any amount. This was an idea that was around, and there was a guy who taught it for a while, and there's still some people who do kind of use it. The problem was that, and it didn't work. I mean, I made, I don't know, maybe $500 worth of sales from it. But here's the thing. I wasn't doing that to give. I was doing that because I was afraid to ask people for money. I was afraid to say, my product is worth X, please pay me that amount of money. And so it was not coming from a place of giving. It was coming from a place of fear. And so it didn't work. But me being me, at least I didn't quit. And the concept of giving and the power of giving really came for me in February and March and April and into May. And by May 1st, I was sold and didn't need anyone else to tell me. What happened was I joined Marie Forleo's B School, and I joined through Amy Porterfield. So I was in a group with her people, and I just decided to be a crazy giver. And so I posted, as I would create freebies, because again, the people in that community were all online entrepreneurs. So they were all my target people. And so when I would create a freebie, I knew it was something they could use. And so at that point, I just started posting the free guides I was creating in the group as a PDF without a call to action. They didn't have to sign up. They didn't have to do anything. And I sanitized it so like the freebies didn't even have like a link at the end saying, oh, and if you want to do further, I took all of that out. I was just giving. And I did that, and I gave of my time in that group, and I gave of my knowledge in that group, and I gave of myself repeatedly in that group. And so I was doing that in that group. Then separately, I'd started my own group, and this is coming into April. There was this crazy concept known as the GDPR. I think it's the General Data Protection Regulation. I don't even remember the name of it anymore, but it's basically, we just call it GDPR. It's the data regulation from the EU. And it was a thing. And people kept asking me about it because I'm a lawyer. So they wanted to know my advice on how to comply. And I was like, let me go try to find a training that I can send people to. And so I went and watched a bunch of them, and they all sucked. I was like, I don't even know what these mean as a lawyer. And so I decided to create my own training and give it to them. I didn't charge for it, in spite of the fact that if you were in this space back in the April and May of 2018 time period, you know that most lawyers were basically treating this thing as a bonanza to try to scare the bejesus out of people and charge them a lot of money for stuff. Saying they were charging for checklists, they were charging for this, that, and the other, and they were just trying to make their money. I, on the other hand, said, nope, I'm going to give it away. And so I give away this 3-part training, but that was important. But on top of that, people heard about it. People who were coaches and mentors, people who had much bigger audiences than me, like my friend Amy Porterfield, who at the time was not my friend. At the time, I was one of her students. She heard that I was giving this thing away for free. And so suddenly I was asked to be on podcasts talking about the GDPR, and people were sending their people to my training about the GDPR. And so all of a sudden it exploded my business. And then I go and I have my first launch in early May, and all of these people who had seen me giving bought. And so that kind of sealed it for me. And so that was May of 2018, and I have expanded since then. Nowadays, my peers in my mastermind, my wife, my team, they have to tell me to give less because they all think I'm giving too much away, and I keep fighting them. So that's kind of my story, but I want to now go into this because you're like, okay, great, a story, but what the heck does this mean, being a radical giver? And how do I go about doing it? And what I want to tell you is there's a few different elements of it. The first element is that it has to be non-expectant. And this one is very hard to get your mind around because realistically, you are doing it because you believe it will serve your business interests, right? That's why you're going to do this. But here's the thing. If you are giving to get, it will not work. If you are giving as a tactic, it will not work. You have to be giving because you get to the point that the act of giving brings you joy. And that's why you're doing it. And you are happy to give in spite of the fact, even though you know that 99% of the people that you give to will never buy from you. You have to get to that point. And you have to get to the point that you honestly feel joy from the act of giving. And this is the hardest piece. It's hard for me to tell you how to do this. You just have to get there. Maybe at first you try a fake it till you make it, but realistically, you have to be in that place. And what I'll tell you is if you try it as a tactic, everybody sees through it and it's not giving anymore. And let me give you some examples outside of the business world. But in the business world, we all know people who are giving, but it's like it just doesn't feel like, you can kind of tell it's like they're only giving, they're only going to give you this thing because they expect that then you're going to give something back to them. It is a tit for tat, a quid pro quo, if you will. And they want, and you feel it, and so it doesn't feel like giving. Well, we've all seen that in contexts where it turns us off. And one example that I can think of, so I gave money to the charity set up by Stu and Amy McLaren called Village Impact. It's a charity that helps build schools over in Africa. I was at an event. They talked about it. I said, yep, I'm giving. And for people who gave at the highest level, who gave, I think it was at least $5,000, you were going to be invited to a mastermind up in Canada with Stu for one day. And, I was like, okay, well, that's great, but whatever. So I gave, and then I saw them again at another event, and I started talking because they hadn't charged my card yet, which I thought was weird. And so I was talking to the woman who runs it, and she was explaining to me that they don't charge the cards normally until the dates for the mastermind are set, because people have gotten upset before when they can't make the mastermind date. And I said, wait, what? I said, but I'm giving to a charity. And she explained that a lot of people don't do that. And then candidly, I actually saw someone do this. Someone say, no, I don't want to give money because I can't make that date with this charity. And I will just tell you that seeing that brought my estimation of that person way down. Because again, if you're giving to a charity, you should be giving to a charity, not giving to a charity so that you will get a mastermind. Now, again, is it nice that I get to have a mastermind retreat in Canada? Of course, but that's not why I gave. And I use that as an example because I think you can see that where if I'm giving to a charity to get something back, it's not really giving, it's more I'm buying something. And it just doesn't feel the same. But let me give you another example. And this is an example that, a woman who coaches men explained to me that it's a common thing. And if you have children, I'd suggest maybe you pause this right now. There is a common phenomenon in relationships and in marriages that creates, a bit of problems. And it is that oftentimes one member of a relationship will bargain for sex. And they don't do it by saying, by literally saying, I'm going to do this for you, but only if. But that's the subtext, meaning people are, one member of the couple is nice to or does something for the other member of the couple. And it is very clear it is simply to get that, it is a tit for tat. It is a quid pro quo. And the woman explained to me, and it makes sense, that in that context, all of a sudden, the nice thing that person did doesn't feel like a nice thing. And so again, it's the same concept in relationships as it is in business. If people feel like you are giving only so that they will give back to you, it's not going to work. It only works if you are willing to give because the act of giving without expectation is, something that you want to do. And so you have to get there. And I don't know how to tell you how to do it, but that's what you need to do if you want this to work. The next piece, though, is that the giving needs to be joyful. And this is kind of related, right? I mean, we don't want to feel like people are giving and, it's pulling teeth or like they're mad about it or something like that. So again, and this is kind of related to the non-expectant thing, right? If we feel like someone gave us something, but they're going to be mad if we don't reciprocate, that doesn't feel good. I mean, that actually feels bad. It makes this kind of sense of like resentment, rise up. It's like, oh, they gave me something. Now I have to do this for them. Like, that's not what you want. So you have to feel this joyfulness from the other person who literally is getting joy from seeing it. And the best analogy I can give you here is imagine like the joy. If you have kids, I think you'll understand this. If you don't, you've seen it enough to experience it. The joy that I get from buying my daughter a gift and seeing the excitement on her face and the joy in her face, it brings joy to my heart. Well, I bring the same attitude to business. When I see that last year I helped over 6,000 people get the one thing that they're legally required to get on their website, a privacy policy, and get it done, that brought joy to my heart. It doesn't matter that literally, I mean, I don't even know how many of them are still on my list, but I suspect that half of them weren't even on my list anymore within 2 to 3 months because they had unsubscribed or whatever. And many fewer bought from me, but it doesn't matter because I got to help 6,000 people build their businesses. And that brings me joy. And I hope you can get that when people see that in me, see that joy, that I have that joy from doing that, naturally it's going to make them feel connected to me. And again, it's going to make it so that I can build the connections and the relationships. But that's not why I do it. I do it because it brings me joy. So again, this is one of those things you have to make this mindset shift. And the next thing I want to talk about, the next element of radical giving is that what you give has to actually be valuable. Like we've all heard this concept, you should give away your best stuff. And that's true. It can't be that, oh, well, what do I have that no one really cares about? I'll give that away. You know, that's not giving. It's not, oh, well, let me give this thing away that I've never charged for and never would charge for. And I mean, you can do that. But when you actually like give some of your best information away, when you give things that either you have charged for in the past or that you would charge for or that your competitors charge for, that's when it's like, whoa, okay, this is some radical giving. Now, I want to be careful here. I am not suggesting that if you literally have one trade secret that makes all the difference for what you teach, that you have to give that away. But what I'm talking about is you don't come at it from the perspective of, am I giving too much? You come at it from the perspective of, could I give more? And if you shift the way you think about it, all of a sudden you will start to give away more of your best stuff. And guess what? It doesn't prevent people from buying from you. I hear people say that all the time. And are there some people who maybe would have bought from you if you hadn't given it away? Sure, I will grant that. Maybe there's a few people who are like, okay, I got everything I need, I'm done. But on net, you will attract so many more people who will say, because of that, I want to buy from you. Because you're willing to do that, I'm going to buy from you. That will offset anybody who leaves because you, quote, gave away too much for free. So that's something that I truly believe. So let's talk about, those are kind of the big elements, non-expectant, joyful, and it's got to be valuable. But let's talk about what this ends up looking like. How do you kind of implement this? Well, it means that you give your time, and you give time to your people, to your audience. And it could be like how I've done it by, just being crazy, super helpful in Facebook groups, where that is kind of that's my jam, right? I mean, that's what I like doing. I like mixing it up, talking to people, having fun with them, etc. But giving so much value that I've become like a crazy helpful resource in communities because I give them my time. But again, and it doesn't mean that every time someone asks you to pick your brain that you say yes, but it means that you don't automatically say no, not unless you're going to pay me. That sometimes you do give some time to people. It means that when you see one of your people, and I don't even mean a customer, but someone in your tribe, someone in your community who is in pain, that you actually are willing to put in the time to help them. And I'll tell you, I saw this from my friend Amy Porterfield. It was one of the things that made me, one of her, quote, fans for life. I saw her do that on a Sunday afternoon. I mean, now it's like 2 years ago as I'm recording this, where literally someone in her community was posted something. I don't even remember what it was about, but this person was clearly in pain, was clearly suffering, and was down. And Amy recorded like this 10-minute audio thing that she posted for this woman. No pretext, no, subtext, no buy anything. It was just to be helpful and to give. And guess what? I saw it. And guess what? A bunch of other people saw it. And so you should take that same approach, or my view, you should take that same approach with your community. When you see those things, be willing to do it. And it's giving of your knowledge too. It is really sharing the information that you have that can help people. And the great thing is that you can sometimes do this without even cannibalizing your product. And that was kind of what happened for me when I started this giving was, yes, I was helping people with legal stuff, but I was also helping people with marketing stuff because I had marketing knowledges, because I had been doing this for a while. I understood funnels and inbound marketing and content marketing and those things. And so I could answer questions. And so I did. And I gave of that knowledge. And guess what? That made people look and say, man, this guy is helpful. And so again, it looks like that. But here is the one that blows people away. It means sending people to, quote, competitors from time to time. And I know that's something that people will hear and will say, what? Well, let me tell you, when people come to me, and let's say they come to me and they have a very specific thing about health coaching or something like that, I say, don't go to me. Go to Lisa Fraley. Lisa Fraley is another attorney in the online space. She is a certified coach. She used to work in like as a health care lawyer of some sort. So I'm like, she's going to know that a lot better than me. So go to her, not me. And again, people think it's crazy that I would do that because literally she sells legal templates. I sell legal templates. She doesn't even know I do it. I don't tell them to tell her I sent me. I don't care about that. I'm doing it because I believe that she can serve my people better than I can. And that's the kind of level of giving that when you get to that point, that's when you can say that you actually are a radical giver. And again, hopefully you can see how if you do that, it can make a huge difference because people will then say, like, if that same person comes back to you with another question, you say, yeah, I can help you. Here's how. And you send them to a paid product. Guess what? They're going to remember that in the past, you actually sent them somewhere else and said, don't buy from me. And again, you don't do it for that, but that's the result. The result of all of this, like, being a radical giver, it's not about short-term gain. I'm going to be very clear. But nothing I teach is about playing the short game. Everything I teach is about playing the long game. It's about building a business over the long term because I don't want a business that is, going to mean, be successful for a year. I want a business that will be here for a decade, decades more. And so that's my view. And what I will tell you is when you adopt this radical giving perspective, it can lead to monumental shifts for you. If you want radical fans, be a radical giver because the people who have seen you do this over and over and over again, they are the ride or die fans. They are the fans who will stand up and shout down trolls who say mean things about you. They are the fans who are going to say, I don't care what you've got to sell, but I'm going to buy it because I know your heart. They are the people who will go out and tell everybody that they should buy whatever it is you sell from you. They become brand advocates, brand promoters. And again, here's the thing. I was on a training recently from one of the bigger companies that teaches marketing. I was part of one of their programs and I was like, let me actually look at this at some point and decide whether I want to stay. And they had this thing and they were talking about the customer journey. And in their view of the customer journey, someone can't become a brand advocate or a brand promoter until not only have they bought from you, but they bought from you multiple times. And I said, well, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard because I got a lot of brand advocates who've never bought anything from me. Literally, I have people who've never bought something from me because they haven't needed it, but who are sending people to me. And I definitely have brand promoters who've only bought one thing from me. Like people who bought maybe my website template pack, which I sell insanely cheap at $97. And they will then say, they bought that. And so they see anybody and they say, I'll go to Bobby. His stuff is amazing. You should go there. I'm going to when I need the other stuff, I'm going to get it there too. Those are the kinds of fans that will build your business over the long term. And the way to build that kind of loyalty is by being a radical giver because they will see it, they will appreciate it, and it will create that kind of, people who want to follow you, who want to be in your orbit, because we all want to be around those kinds of people. So that's the first piece, is it's going to create the radical fans. But here's the other thing. It will also create the friendships that can impact your business in untold ways. I can talk about friendships that I have with peers who saw me in that first group I was in. Some of the most important voices in my ear. You've heard me talk about my friend Jillian Bowen, who is kind of my content guru and helped me with that. Well, I had been on a Zoom call with her once, and she had seen me interact in that group when I joined B School and be so helpful. And then we were at an event together and we met, and literally it was just kind of like a bunch of us who were there early went to lunch together. The first day we went to lunch together. Jillian and I happened to sit next to each other. And we started talking, and I don't even remember what happened, but she said, well, you've been so helpful in the group. The least I can do is help you with that. And that, literally just that. And she is one of these very important voices in my ear anytime. And literally, sometimes literally and sometimes figuratively, I simply hear her telling me things that help my business. My friend Melanie Howe, the same way, who is basically the person behind the More Cowbell concept that I talk about. It was the same thing. She had seen me be so helpful in that group, and so she wanted to help me, and so she has become a friend. So those people are so important to me as friends who I talk to, who help me, who guide me. But also I built friendships with people who are, kind of ahead of me on the journey because they have seen what I've done. It's how I built my friendship with Amy Porterfield, with Tarzan K, with all of the people that I am now friends with. It's because they have seen this in me, they appreciate it, and it just kind of naturally leads to it. And I can tell you, having those friendships matters. You're going to need them in your business. So I would encourage you, if you want to build a business that will be here for the long term, one of the most important things you can do is make the decision to become a radical giver. And notice I didn't say to give. I said to become a radical giver. It's about who you are. It's about changing your disposition. And again, I know candidly that a lot of people listening to this will not follow my advice. They're not going to listen to me. They're going to say, that Bobby guy, he's nuts. I'm not giving away my best stuff. If that's you, I would encourage you to give it a try. Because what I will tell you is when you make this shift, it will be huge for your business, for your life, for everything. And if you want a resource that will help you to think this through and understand it, there is a great little book. I read it after I'd already made the shift, but it really describes so much of what I teach on this. Go get it. It's called The Go-Giver. There's multiple versions, but you just want the original one, The Go-Giver. Pretty sure it has a red cover. It's told as a parable, so a story. It's easy to read. I read it once, or I think I listened to it initially in Audible, but I bought a hard copy and I read it again in like an hour and a half or 2 hours. But it will help you to understand this concept. So I would commend you to do that. And if you want to help me with my giving goal, my goal of being an even more of a radical giver this year, if you need a privacy policy for your website, if you know someone else who does, I would appreciate you, heading over to my freebie, bobbyklinck.com/free privacy policy. Again, bobbyklinck.com/free privacy policy, and pick one up and send your friends there. And you can tell them, I would love to keep serving them, talking to them, because I love having email conversations, but there's no hard feelings. If you simply download it and then unsubscribe right away, that's okay. I'm not going to complain, because like I said, for me, it's about being able to help people build their businesses and see that I had some small impact on helping them do that. That brings me all the joy I need. So that's my call to action to you today. Go out, be a radical giver, and I'll see you next time. That's it for this episode of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. Make sure to tune in next time. And in the meantime, go out and build the badass business of your dreams.